5 friends from Finland had made the risky dip into the idyllic pond Plura and swam underground for half a kilometer that led them to a long, colorful cave. But what the experienced divers do is they often carry on further to find an icy cold area of water in complete darkness, known as a sump, which eventually led them to the cave of Steinagolflaget, which is exactly the destination of these 5 Finnish divers. It's a grueling 5-hour trip which challenges you to dive to depths of more than 130 meters with only underwater scooters to help you move faster. But these guys believe they could handle it by themselves, leading to an extremely horrific aftermath. Today, we are delving into the tragic story that led to the complete ban of Plura Cave. Plura Cave, located in the Nordland region of Norway, is an extensive underwater cave system that has fascinated divers from all over the world. Stretching over 2 kilometers, this cave system starts with a large, calm pool at the entrance. But don't let the serenity fool you. Beneath the serene surface lies a complex network of tunnels, narrow passages, and deep chambers filled with freezing water. On 6th February 2014, the coldest month of the year, Finnish divers arrived at the entrance of Plura Cave. The air was crisp, and a light layer of snow covered the ground, adding to the quiet and somewhat eerie atmosphere. These divers, all very experienced and careful, were gearing up for their dive. They double-checked their equipment, ensuring everything was in perfect condition. They knew the risks, but were driven by their passion for exploration and the thrill of the unknown. They entered the water one by one. As they descended, the clear water surrounded them, and the world above disappeared. Their lights cut through the darkness, revealing the limestone walls carved by water over thousands of years. At first, the dive was straightforward. The walls were covered with delicate formations, and the visibility was excellent, making them feel safe. 2 divers cut a triangular hole in the ice at Plura and, encased in waterproof dry suit and diving equipment, slipped into the water. 2 hours later, after the sediment raised by the first divers had been allowed to settle, 3 of their friends followed behind. The destination for all 5 men was Steinagolflaget. They were Finnish divers who knew one another from explorations they'd made of the Ojamo mine, west of Helsinki. As per the custom of the group, no one was in overall command, but the first diver to set off was Patrick, one of the trio of Finns who had discovered the passage between the caves the year before. He was diving with his good friend Jari, who was attempting the traverse for the first time. The trip was at the extreme end of a dangerous sport. While most amateur divers might restrict themselves to dives of between 30 minutes and an hour at a depth of 30 meters or so, the trip to Steinagolflaget would be a 5-hour dive, with an aid of underwater scooters to depths of more than 130 meters. At such depths and temperatures, a tear in a dry suit on the sharp cave floor could result in death. There's also the possibility of equipment failure and hypercapnia, also known as carbon dioxide poisoning. Carbon dioxide gets absorbed into the bloodstream much faster and easier at depth. Cave divers use rebreathers, which artificially absorb the carbon dioxide they exhale, but these can become overloaded if the divers start breathing quickly. Additionally, it's more difficult for them to control their breathing at depth. Hypercapnia can be deadly, but even a mild case may cause confusion and disorientation, which in a deep cave is liable to have serious consequences. About an hour into the dive, shortly after the pair had swum through the deepest section and were about 110 meters lower than the cave entrance at Plura, Gronqvist realized that Jari was not behind him. He went back and found his friend had become stuck in a narrow section of the cave, entangled in a cord connected to a piece of his equipment. He was using his torch to signal distress. On the flip side, Jari seemed to be starting to panic, which meant he risked breathing too fast. Gronqvist gave him a cylinder of gas to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in his system, but while Jari was switching mouthpieces, he started helplessly swallowing water. Due to this, his friend died in front of his naked eyes. Although Gronqvist felt agitated, he knew that getting worked up would put him at risk of hypercapnia. After a brief effort to free the body, he forced himself to calm down. He had no choice but to continue to stifle a flaget, moving very slowly. Divers who go deep underwater can't go straight to the surface because they might get decompression sickness, which can be very dangerous. The deeper the dive, the longer they need to decompress. Since he spent about 20 minutes at a depth of 110 meters helping his friend, Grönqvist knew he would need to take many breaks while coming up to avoid getting sick. He also knew that at some point the second group of divers would find Jari's body blocking their way. The first diver in the second team was Visa. When he saw his friend's dead body, he was shocked, but he had a decision to make between moving forward to the Snæfell flaget or to going back to the entrance point of the cave. And he chose to move forward, although it took him 15 minutes to get past the dead body of Jari. He eventually got caught up with Grönqvist, but Visa found himself struggling to pass Jari's body, which added 3 hours to his decompression time. Because he began to run low on gas, he was forced to surface 80 minutes early. Soon afterwards, he began to suffer mild pains in his knees and elbows. These symptoms of decompression sickness, often called the bends, which grew steadily more serious over the following hours. Visa later found out that while he'd been struggling to pass Jari's body, the diver behind him, Jari, was also running into difficulties. Norwegian police believed that he panicked after seeing what happened to Jari and drowned. Despite the fifth and final diver, Kankkonen, trying to help him, Usamaki tragically also died during the descent. Kankkonen admitted in his interviews that his recollection of the events is somewhat hazy. But unlike Visa, Kankkonen decided not to push through to Snæfell flaget. Instead, he turned around and swam the long way back to the starting point. He finally emerged from the cave in the early hours of the next day, more than 11 hours after setting off on a dive that was supposed to take 5 hours. By the time he reached Plura, he had to break a thin layer of ice to climb out of the water. The 3 survivors were all hospitalized with decompression sickness. The Norwegian authorities took statements from them and closed the Plura Cave. I guess the word ban would be more appropriate, because after this dangerous encounter, Norwegian authorities didn't want to take any more risks for other divers. However, there was another plan going on in the minds of the trio who had just come out from the massive danger. Grönqvist started asking the world-renowned divers who could help him to retrieve both of his friends' bodies. He contacted the British cave diver Rick Stanton, who was renowned for his rescue and recovery work in caves. So before they received a request for help from Norwegian police, Stanton and 2 other British divers, John Valantin and Jason Mallinson, clambered into Snæfell flaget. But when they dived down to survey the site of Jari's accident, they discovered that he could not be readily freed from the Snæfell flaget side, and he blocked access to the second victim, Usamaki. The only alternative was to perform the traverse from Plura all over again, and thus gain access to the victims from the other side. Plus, they had a distinct advantage over the British rescue team as they had performed the traverse before, so felt confident they could reach the bodies from the Plura side. In diving into the unknown, we won't see any of the divers collapsing into tears or talking emotionally about lost friends. Instead, the atmosphere was one of intense single-mindedness, as the team discussed how to maneuver the bodies through the water and preserve them until the police could come and collect them. In all, a team of 27 people descended on Plurdalen on 22nd March 2014, 17 Finns and 10 Norwegians. 2 teams of support divers would work at shallower levels at both ends of the traverse, while Grönqvist, Pakarainen, and Kankkonen would dive once again to the deepest section of the cave to raise the bodies up. And Visa would be the surface manager. This time they took no chances. The first step in the 5-day operation was to lug more than a ton of gear into the cave at Snæfell flaget, winching it bit by bit up a cable to the mountain. Then they spent a day setting up equipment, leaving 50 cylinders of gas along the route and, on the Plura side, an underwater habitat. This is a pocket of air that divers can use during decompression stops, allowing them to get out of the cold water, remove their masks, and even eat. If the divers found Huhtarinen's body impossible to shift, they would have to make the long trip back to Plura, and such a device might be a lifesaver. On the 3rd day, 24 March, the divers began the recovery itself, slipping once again beneath the icy lid of Plura, accompanied by underwater camera operators. But after descending about 85 meters, Kankkonen returned. Looking upset, he explained in the film that he slept badly and was simply not in the right frame of mind for the operation. Pakarinen and Gronqvist continue the descent alone. They pass the floating body of Jari. Then, just 20 meters or so further on, they encounter Jari Huotarinen, exactly as Gronqvist had left him 7 weeks earlier. Cutting his equipment away, they managed to release the body and negotiated it through the narrow part of the cave. Then Gronqvist steered a dive scooter towards the surface, towing the body, while Pakarinen followed to help maneuver it. Gronqvist is the first to surface, eventually in Steinaglflaget, where Visa is waiting to greet him. The following day, Gronqvist and Pakarinen returned to retrieve Jari's body, assisted at depth by another diver. This time the team launched their recovery from Steinaglflaget. It proved a more difficult day than they anticipated, because this body was more buoyant and unyieldy than the first, but they somehow rescued it also. At last, though, both victims were lifted up to Steinaglflaget, where they were placed in body bags. What was planned as a 5-hour adventurous cave dive turned into a mournful 101-hour ordeal, rescuing the dead bodies of his friends. I don't know why, but the Plura Caves are now open once again, and nobody has made a new attempt at the traverse. But Sami Pakarinen said it's only a matter of time.